Welcome to the West of North London podcast, where we sit down each and every week to answer your big Arsenal questions. I'm Caleb.
And I'm Tim.
How's it going?
It's all right. Giro d'Italia is on, so I've been watching a lot of bike racing. And I think I've said this multiple times on episodes. I've pretended soccer hasn't existed for a little bit, and my mental health has been a lot better since I've done that. How about you?
Yeah, I think I'm okay. I feel a little shell shocked, to be honest. Yeah. But I guess luckily there is Sounders, there is other stuff, there's other soccer to watch if you do want to watch soccer to take your mind off of things. But it's hard to not think back and be like, oh, yeah, Arsenal's still are still shit. So
it's funny. I called a soccer trifecta where all three of my favorite teams won over the weekend with Arsenal, Sounders, and Hammarby, but one of them felt a little bit emptier than the other two. So, and I'm sure we'll get to that.
Yes. Drinks first. What do you got this week? What's in your cup or in your hand?
I'm going a little kind of old school. I'm doing a Johnny Utah by Georgetown Brewing.
Nice.
As I've said before many times on this program, I think the IPA trend has kind of left me behind, and so I do enjoy a good pale ale, and this is one of my favorite pale ales, and I love Georgetown Brewing. Nothing bad to say about this brewery, so yeah. And if you haven't had it, definitely check out Johnny Utah. I believe it won a couple of awards at different brewery festivals, so it's a good solid pale ale.
Cool. I'm drinking Bale Breaker again this week. Go to Bottom Cutter Imperial IPA.
Do you think we just got into comfort beers? Because it's kind of like, you get to comfort food when you have like a bad day, and, we both know we have to talk about some stuff that we don't want to talk about. So we went to our comfort beers.
Yeah. I just like hold this beer tight. let it wrap me in its embrace.
Exactly. I'm pretty sure that's why I went with Johnny Utah's. I didn't want to try anything new. I just wanted something I knew was going to be good, which is unlike other things we can talk about later. So
yes. All right, well, let's get to Tim's bit.
All right, Tim's bit, which I'm in love with. So we're going to be talking about this quite a bit. I'm going forward, and I know it's going to be a worn question, but my question is, what is your ideal Arsenal team? Like, who would you bring in? Who would you keep if Kroenkes gave all their Walmart money to Arsenal, and the money was no issue, not being in Europe was no issue? How would you set up the team?
Oh, I almost hate this question because fantasizing about it and then coming back to reality is rough.
Well, we'll start with the fantasy, and then we'll rip the legs out from under you.
Yeah. So who do you go get? I mean,
I think the easier thing maybe is, who do you keep? Who would you keep in the formation? What formation would you run?
Who would I keep in the current team?
Yeah.
God, no one. Scorched earth. Let's start fresh. No, just kidding.
You wouldn't keep Tierney?
I would keep Tierney. I'd keep Saka. I'd keep Emile Smith-Rowe. I would keep... I want to say Saliba, but I don't know. But I mean, potentially he's going to be good. Oh man, it gets a little hazy after that. Like, I don't know if I would want to die on anybody's hill beyond those guys.
You'd replace Leno?
Yeah, well, we will talk more about Leno, but I'm not sure I think he's the best in the world. Like if we're talking about you could replace anybody and go out and get somebody better, I think there's better goalkeepers out there. That's not to say he's not the best we can get. I mean, like as far as value for money, he's probably as good as it gets for us right now. But um, there's rumors going around that Leno is up for sale. Like Arsenal are willing to let him part for the right amount of money. So
Yeah, I
we
mean,
may see what that looks like, and maybe wish we hadn't.
I just saw it. I was before we were recording. I was looking on the Guardian, and there was a big article about Leno and Bellerin being two of the bigger names that we're looking to offload in the off season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we can have a separate conversation about that, and it will come up because we have nothing else to talk about of any substance
All right,
in the
then.
coming weeks.
So then you have the scorched earth. They're getting rid of basically everybody but 3, maybe 4 players. So who are
Yeah.
you bringing in an ideal world?
Mm. This gets tough. This gets harder because do you build around youth? Do you build around experience? If cost is no object.
No, it's all the Walmart money you can want. All those like shower curtains people buy going straight to the Arsenal coffer.
I'd bring in Mbappe. I think I like him. I'm kind of toying with him and Holland, but I think I like Mbappe better.
Why not both?
Why not both? We're gonna play with two up top.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. Who do you get to set up that front two if we go that way? That's
one of the players you didn't mention keeping that I think I would keep is Odegaard, because I think if you had someone of the talent of Mbappe with Odegaard right behind him, I think that could be a sexy little combination.
Yeah, I guess I don't really consider Odegaard ours, but I guess I would go buy him. I could I could keep him. Yeah, Odegaard would be good. I think there's surely some good midfielders out there that I'm not thinking of because there's a million of them. But yeah, I'd be fine with Odegaard. Yeah, it's hard to fill out a dream.
Yeah.
Starting 11 on the spot. I'm trying
Well,
to think about.
Would you take Hazard? Either Hazard?
No, not a fan. Oh, it's hard on the spot, Tim. Putting me under pressure.
Well, I mean, midfield, it's harder once you get into the midfield because there are a lot of good options. I don't even know the ideal, especially because our midfield is actually the place where we are stacked and have been stacked for like a million years. I know the players I'd get rid of in an instant. I'd get rid of Ceballos. Like he can't leave fast enough for me. But it's like if you have Odegaard, Saka, and Smith Rowe in the midfield, I don't think, and Party, I think you're pretty well set at least for a starting 11 in the midfield.
Yeah, I think you go out and try to find some good wingers. It's questionable whether you keep Pepe as depth, but I'm not thinking about depth.
Yeah, exactly. This is just starting 11. I'm not going too deep into this.
Yeah, I feel like I just need like a list of the world's top players in front of me. It's hard for me to like pull up the Rolodex.
Well, for me, it's hard because like when I think about this, I do have biases against other teams in the Premier League. Mm-hmm. So if you play for Tottenham, I'm never going to talk to you or speak to you. Pretty close for Chelsea. And then like I have a couple. I mean, I would get a De Bruyne in a second. If De Bruyne were available, I would steal him and love him. He's possibly one of my favorite players to watch. But a lot of City players, I don't like City from a political or like just general standpoint. And then I don't know. I've stopped hating Man U. I'd take Pogba, I think. I know that may be controversial. That might be a hot take, but I like Pogba. At least how he plays for the French national team. So
yeah, I would bring in more French players.
Yeah,
I'd be down for that. Well, I'm clearly horrible at answering this question right now. not so good at it without some prep. But
Yeah, that's why I like to do these questions. I like to pop them out, get your top of the answer. I'm interested in the Mbappe versus Haaland.
mm-hmm.
And
I don't know where I land on that one. If push came to shove, do you go with the um, slightly more established player, or bank on the possible high ceiling of Holland?
well, it's funny because they play the same or similar positions, but they're so different in how they play. Like, and for me, like Holland reminds me of Ruud van Nistelrooy, which I know is not a player we like necessarily, but like that kind of in the box, if it goes anywhere near him, it's going in the goal, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
Holland brings. He will score you goals. Whereas Mbappe, I think, is a little bit more creative, and he has that speed. Mbappe actually reminds me of a better Aubameyang, and
Yes.
they have very similar. It's just say it's an upgrade to go Mbappe. So, and that tends to be a player I like a little bit more. So I can see why you go with a Mbappe over a Holland.
To me, it feels like the one that got away. Like, to correct the storyline, to come bring things full circle. Mbappe coming to Arsenal seems like it in my fictional storyline. That's It's like some poetic justice to have him eventually make his way back here, even
Yeah.
though he never really. I mean, it's only a story. It's only some anecdote from Arsene Wenger that he's this close, you know.
Yeah.
And there's always these ones that are just signing away, just a meeting away, and didn't make it happen.
Didn't Arsene say that about Salah too?
Oh, he's said it about a few players, you know.
Yeah.
He was apparently on the bleeding edge of getting a lot of guys, but it didn't happen for some reason.
So speaking of being on the bleeding edge, how do you feel? Let's move on to this painful part. What do you think of the Villarreal game?
All right, I'm just gonna lean into the pain, I guess.
And
I mean,
beyond.
that was just bad. I mean, it takes me back to last the MLS Cup, and thinking about um, the Sounders just not showing up at the end. And I think the part that frustrated me then, and the part and that same feeling came back in this game, was like, especially for people like us who, like, because of this podcast and because we're fans, we put a ton of time and as much effort as you possibly can for people that don't live in London. You know, um, it's frustrating to put in a season's worth of effort and then just have a team very just not show up. I mean, I don't. That's pretty much what happened. They did not come to that game to play. They were not there. They were vacant. It was not available.
When I was watching that game, there was a part of me that was like, "Oh, they're playing a game where they're trying not to concede, and then in the last 75 or like from 75th minute on, they're just gonna like pour on, be more energy, and just like try and win it in the last 75." And I was waiting for that moment when they just turned it on, because I can understand like the first part of it is like you don't want them to score a goal because that definitely changes the game to a certain extent. Uh, but they just never turned it on, and it was the most disappointing, just horrible thing. Is like I can understand failure. Trust me, in my life, I can understand failure, but like to not try at all, that's just like hurts. And like, and I don't mean to call out players, and I don't want to be that guy that like rails out like the players aren't trying their best, da da da. But like from my viewpoint, watching that game, there wasn't a lot going on, and there wasn't a lot of players that were playing like this game makes or breaks the season. You know?
All you could really point to was a couple close calls from Aubameyang. That's it. That a couple that might have gone in on a different day, but there's been too many times this season where that's all we've had to point to. you know, where they're just left kind of feeling empty because the team could not muster a single goal. I mean, that's the extremely frustrating part of all this. All we needed was one goal. That was it. They didn't even put a goal on the board. Villarreal did not do anything, and still we could not find a goal.
Well, it's like
I don't know what to say after that.
it was like I should have looked up the stat before, but I really didn't want to revisit the game, so I didn't look up any of the stats. So I apologize for anyone that's a stat head. But I remember commentary saying sometime around like the 60th minute that from the penalty to like the 60th, 70th minute in the second game, there were no shots on goal from Arsenal. Like it's one thing to not score a goal, and that's a whole like my base understanding of soccer is you have to score goals to win. I think that's a pretty basic understanding. But
Yes.
when you peel back a layer from that, you have to put the ball in target to score goals. And if you're not putting the ball in target, you're not going to score goals, and then therefore you're not going to win games. And I know that there's probably more complex ways to look at the game, but I don't know. Like, I can't imagine not putting shots on goal for almost 90 minutes.
I mean, you've got I think the thing that came out at the beginning of the game was the scratch from Xhaka and Tierney having to come in pretty cold. You know, he had not gotten to full match fitness, so he was not his normal self playing in that position. But I was like, okay, worse things have happened. It could have been Cedric coming in, or something way worse.
When they announced that, when I was watching it, I thought they said Saka and not Xhaka, and my heart dropped to my stomach when they said that. And then when they did the replacement of Tierney for Xhaka, I'm like, as you said, there's worse things that happen in this world.
But I think looking back on it after the game was over, I think it was clear that that was a bigger deal than it should have been. Like, it left the team kind of without enough creation, which is or just control of passing. Like, and you look at the passing stats, it's not like we didn't have control of the ball. It just felt like we couldn't get it into the right areas. We couldn't get it at the feet of the right people. It was not a cohesive team, at least playing from back to front. It was not fluid. It just didn't. It didn't look like a team that was ready to put themselves on the line. It just looked like a team without ideas, and that's frustrating. I could see that if it was earlier in the season and we hadn't figured things out yet. This is a team with established players. This is a team that's, I mean, short of the late scratch from Xhaka, you're only putting in a player that actually is getting into his natural position, whether he's in shape or not, shouldn't make that big a difference to the overall play of this entire team. I don't know how they just look so poor. I mean, Odegaard was barely, I mean, he was in the game, but he didn't look part of the game. And then, you've got Pepe, Emile Smith-Rowe, and Saka, who are just trying to eke something out of this game, and they just couldn't do it. And it's so frustrating to get to this point in the season and look so out of their depth, out of ideas. I expected so much more from this game, and it really left me well short.
Yeah, I mean, I was genuinely in the build-up excited. The players are saying the right things. You had the interview, I don't know if you saw it before the game, of Aubameyang saying that, he's acknowledging that, it hasn't been the best season for him and he has a lot to make up and he's going to prove it in this game. You saw a lot of players talking about this game, but when it came to the game, it just kind of fell flat. It's like, like that sprinter that's in the block and when the gun shoots, they just fall on their face type of thing. Like it, and it's just disappointing that it just didn't. I'm trying to be level about this, but it just didn't seem like they cared. Like no one, there was no spark of energy. There was no. It didn't seem like a single player was taking that game by the scruff of the neck and saying, "We will not lose this game." You know,
Mm-hmm.
and if
Do
the
we have
game,
that player in this team? Like, who is that guy?
I'd like it to be. I mean, I think Tierney could be that player, but I think coming back from injury and coming back cold, Tierney has been that player.
Mm.
But you're right, because I mean, Xhaka can be that player, but
But he's not a goal scorer.
yeah,
And I mean, he can certainly, I do believe, like, as far as captains or, like, the type of player that you want to motivate your team, that's Jacques is your guy. Louise is another guy,
yeah,
maybe. Not having that in this big game certainly played a role, but I don't know if you could blame it on either one of them, really.
no. I say because like you look at the other players, like I mean, Emil Smith Rowe and Saka, they're just too young and they're not going to be that player. Our quote unquote captain Aubameyang, like I just like he's not going to be that player.
Mm-hmm.
And like we've brushed on a little bit, but I don't think Leno is going to be that player right now. I don't think his heart's into it. At least it's just that's just the vibe I'm getting. So I don't know. Like it was just weird to like this game was the most important game of the season without a doubt, 100%. And to have those players like no one step up and no one really show that passion was hard. But when you really look at it, I feel like we lost that game in the first game and we kind of
Mm-hmm.
tricked ourselves into thinking we had a chance. But
But when all you can really muster is a penalty,
yeah,
and that was like between two legs, that was all you had to show for it. We
yeah,
were never in it in the first place, and it makes you think: had they found a way to eke out another goal, would have just gotten smashed by Man U. I mean, that's what was waiting for us, and this team that showed up in this round would not have fared well in that matchup in the final. Mentally, they did not look ready for that. Physically, I feel like there's too many missing players. Um, you know, and I think just it's not a team that looked ready to make that leap to that Champions League level. And you look at where we stand in the league table as well. It's like we're playing like a mid-table team. This is exactly what we are.
like it's the phrase like if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. You know what I mean?
Right.
And when you look back on this year in Europe, we have not lit the world on fire. When we were playing in the group stage, we were playing some of our B squad, yada yada yada. But I mean, some of those actually moved up to being A squad players. But we look like we were among those teams in the group stage, and then like throughout this knockout round, we haven't impressed. To be honest, like we had the one like second leg against the Czech team, Sparta. It wasn't Sparta. Was it Sparta? Prague?
Yeah.
Whatever Prague team.
In
Uh,
Prague.
yeah,
Yes.
Slavia. It was Slavia, wasn't it? Uh, and but like other than that, it's not like we look like we were dominating. Whereas you look at like what Man U was doing in this tournament, they destroyed Roma. You know what I mean? Like, and Roma
Mm-hmm.
like is a legit decent team, whereas Villarreal is an alright team, but like it's not as good a opponent. And yeah, it's disappointing, and I think we're kind of playing our level right now.
Yeah, I don't think we've never really punched above our weight this season. Like there's been just moments where we've played above um, maybe what we should have on paper, but it feels like this was a reality check. This was coming back down to earth and being like, okay, that FA Cup win really was more of a fluke than anything, and we lucked into a season of Europa League that we didn't maybe earn or deserve. Not to. I don't want to dismiss the FA Cup run last year because we beat good teams to get that trophy, but everything since then would indicate that we were not at the level we needed to be to even. I mean, um, getting through the group stage of Europa League is not. It's not a huge accomplishment. We should not be patting ourselves on the back too much for that. So getting to the semifinal, it's kind of what should be expected. It's what we've done 4 out of 5 times we've been in the Europa League, or in the last few years. So that should be the expectation. But maybe I had too high of expectations, thinking we would just coast our way through to Champions League. I didn't actually believe that. I think I knew all along it was going to be tough to get through the final, but I think I was very hopeful that we'd be talking about European soccer for next season in some form. But at this point, my blinders are off a bit, and I'm
Yeah.
like, this is probably what we should have. We're in the position now that we should have been in last year, where we didn't get to pretend. I mean, we got to pretend for a season, and
Yeah.
and actually, I think that sets us back, because if we would have just come to grips with where we are at realistically, we should have been doing a lot more in trying to rebuild. We should have been doing a lot more in trying to develop the young players that we have, like rather than waiting until Boxing Day to get Emil Smith Rowe in. He probably should have been starting, and probably would have been had things fallen apart more last year. It's like you gotta rely on what you have, and yeah, it's now we have to face the facts, and everybody has to. Arteta has to, ownership has to, Edu, the players, the fans, everyone involved have to come to grips with being a bad team in a bad place that really needs focus and regrouping and a true rebuild. Not just trying to put in a couple players and try again. Like actually rebuild this team to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, I will stop short of saying a bad team because there are bad teams, and
Yeah,
I
but
don't
I
know,
mean,
that's a little bit pedantic was the word I was looking for. But I think in a way we got a little bit of a favor in the fact that I was thinking this year that I'd rather be in Europa again as opposed to going to Champions League, because we bring this team that we're playing to the Champions League. We don't get out of the group stage, and
right.
and it would be an embarrassment to bring this team to the Champions League, to be honest. And like, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm not trying to like be too Debbie Downer, but this team isn't anywhere. Like I watched a lot of the Champions League this year, and we're nowhere near even, some of the teams that we would expect to be better than in former years. Like I think would be extremely lucky to get out of the group stage in a
It
Champions
goes
League next year.
and it goes back to that Super League conversation of like, who do you think you are trying to get into a Super League when this is the product that we have? Like, I get that the money would let you build the team, yada yada yada, but the team that exists now, the team that we have, is so far away from that top tier. Like, it's going to take a lot of time to get to a level with the players, with the coaches, with everything. It's not just the players. Like, we got to be honest with ourselves. It is top to bottom. This club is way out of their league. Like, the idea that they're going to just suddenly be a Champions League caliber club beyond the players on the field, yeah, that doesn't just happen. Even if you have a bunch of money, that doesn't mean you're going to make smart decisions all of a sudden. I mean, we've seen Arsenal, even when they were in Champions League, make very poor contract decisions, make poor personnel decisions. It's kind of been going downhill well before, and these good results helped ease the transition into mediocrity, but the reality has set in that it's been mediocre at different levels, and now it's just catching up to us.
Yeah, and again, like I hate being a Debbie Downer and like too much of a naysayer, but it's like, I mean, you just really look at Arsenal since the Champions League final that we were in, and it's a slow decline, and there's a bunch of different factors that come into it, but it really is since the building of the new stadium and the austerity measures that we came in, and then you have the shift of what soccer ownership is, which has changed in the last 15, 20 years. And it's gone away from a sustainable model, which is what Arsenal's trying to do or had been trying to do, and moved into like, money, petrodollars, oligarchs owning these clubs. And, Arsenal just hasn't competed. And then the only way to counteract that is with smart decisions. And I mean, Arsenal has not made smart decisions since 2005, at least. And it's all these little decisions that we don't think are big deals at the time, but they're little decisions that kind of like pile up on each other to the point where like a bunch of little decisions or bad mediocre or middle decisions become really bad results.
I will point out a bad decision that happened just this week. And it just goes to show the depth of ineptitude that this ownership has when it comes to owning this team. And that's the fact that it has come out that they are going back to back to the drawing board, so to speak, when it comes to their scouting. And they have hired a third party company to headhunt a new group of scouts. So I just have to wonder what the plan was, if there was an actual plan, and if it was in service to saving money, which seems like it would be a very small amount, or if there was some other plan that completely fell apart. Because I don't understand how you acknowledge that this team needs to be rebuilt. You acknowledge that you need to be smart in the marketplace. And yet you let go of basically your entire scouting staff without a subsequent plan in place. If your idea is to just go headhunt a bunch of new scouts, why did you throw that time away? Because money and all this aside, we just wasted like a year and a half, maybe 2 years when all said and done, of time that could have been spent scouting the next group of players that would rebuild this team in a smart and efficient way. And now we're playing catch up again. Like, I'm just in disbelief.
I really do think that the Cronkies got sold a bad bill of sales with this idea of the the agent-based recruitment policy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Cronkies were looking at it like, oh, we're Arsenal, we're going to always be in Europe, and so the money's always going to come. And this seems like a money-saving idea, or at least like from a business perspective, which is like, I hate using those words when we talk about soccer, but they're like looking at it, all right, cool, like we pay this person, they're going to give us the best talent, we get the best talent, and we continue on in this, maybe not championship winning, but getting the money in type of thing. And I think they just went all in on it, and it's without realizing that like agent based things, there's a lot of money that is going not to players, and that I genuinely believe it. I mean, I'm hoping that, like, I was actually kind of hopeful with this move where I think that maybe they're moving away from the agent based recruitment policy, hopefully, because I think
if there's a silver lining, I guess that's it. But I really thought when they let go of all the scouts, Edu made it seem like they were going to, really refocus on being data driven and just go on a totally new model. And this just seems like, oh, I guess that didn't work, or something fell apart, because now we're going back to just finding any old scouts. I mean, I don't really understand what the plan is, but it does not project um, that they know what they're doing. I mean, it's clear to me that they have no clue what they're doing. They keep having to hire outside firms and outside people and bring in all these supposedly I don't even know if they are competent people. I mean, that's the thing. Like all this being said, like are, if you are incompetent at the top, I don't know if you can trust those people to bring in smarter people than them. I don't know if they can recognize it. I don't know if they know what they need. I just feel like they're so far away from actually doing this correctly.
And at the end of the day, like, you can make a model of business that, or whatever, that works that way, but you have to understand that it's extremely inefficient. And if you're trying to run an efficient anything, hiring outside, contracting out all this stuff, each time you contract out is going to be loss of money. And we are a club that can't afford to lose money. And we have been since the Emirates was built, a club that can't afford to lose money. And yeah, I don't know where you go from here. I mean, like, I'm glad that we're getting scouts. That's awesome.
Yeah. But I mean, look at the Super League situation, and there's been talk of fines and other things leveled at the club, and the Cronkies have made clear that they would take care of any of the additional fees and fines that are associated with that debacle. But um, you get into those situations, and you have to pay your way out of them, and you try to fix those things and get the team back on the right track. It seems like that's what they want. But at the same time, it's like this team has been floundering for far longer than this. And yet they have not been willing to invest what it takes to correct course. And it's like how far do things have to go before you're willing to say, okay, we screwed up and we're going to pay the money to fix it? You're willing to do that for the Super League debacle, but what about the actual team that you have beyond that? Like, are you willing to spend the money to fix this problem that you've created? And I don't know that I think they will. I mean, all this talk of fixing things this summer, of splashing the cash to make things better, I don't believe it. I don't buy it.
Well, there does come a point too of how much money you actually have to splash. The amount of money that the Cronkies are thinking about splashing, I assume, probably would have fixed things about 7 years ago. But where we are now is going to take it's going to take a Man City investment. And you look at like how Man City went from, where we are on the table to, where they are now. And it was close to billions of dollars overall in transfer fees. And not only that, but also convincing players to come, which is a whole nother thing, that now that we're not in Europe and we don't have we're not even like, and I say this with all vile and hatred in my heart, we're not even the sexiest club to go in London right now, And there's a lot and that's going to take even more money to convince players to even come here to begin with. And yeah, like, clubs go in cycles, and like, one of the things to remember is Leeds was a European champion. Leeds was the best team in England in the 1970s, 60s, 70s. Sorry for people. Somewhere around there.
Sorry for people.
Somewhere in mid-century, they were the best team in England, and they got relegated and spent years in the second division. And these types of cycles happen with teams. And if you don't recognize it early enough, you're going to get caught in a place where you can start throwing some money around. Because it's not like Everton isn't throwing money around. It's not like these other teams in the Premier League aren't throwing some money around. But you're going to have to throw like actual significant money at this point to actually stop the decline. And I don't think, and this is going to be real talk, I don't think the Cronkies actually have the money themselves to actually get Arsenal out of the hole. And that's
I think they could. I don't think but I think, like, if you look at the the other sports franchises that they're involved in, there's a level of stability that is in those American leagues that they were hoping to bring to Arsenal by doing the Super League. But it is a very different creature to have this what seems like the Wild West sort of league where there is no salary caps, there is no guarantee that you stay up, there's no guarantee that you're going to make the top dollar just by being involved. Like you actually have to invest smartly. You have to run the club smartly. It is not like NFL where you can be a crap team year after year and still make decent money on it. I mean, granted, the biggest teams still make a lot more, but I mean, if it's just another team in your portfolio and you don't care about success, it's still like Arsenal. If Arsenal was just left alone, it would crash and burn and drop into a lower division and no longer be the profit center that you need. And I think it's just too much work for them. I just think it's just something that they didn't realize needed so much upkeep and financial injections along the way. It's one thing to say, we're gonna have the sustainable model, and we're gonna only spend money that we can make by selling players and off of ticket sales and sponsorships and all these things. We've seen that isn't enough. That it's you actually have to be smart with your money. Like it is not. It is not a self-sustaining thing that is a machine that left on its own will just continually spit out money and stay stable. You actually have to have smart people in the right positions that will continue to, guide this team in that upward trajectory. If you make dumb mistakes and put the wrong people in leadership positions, we're now seeing what happens. It is not something that just fixes itself. It will never fix itself. And I am not convinced that even someone with more money could necessarily come in and fix this. It's not enough to just have money. Bottom line. Even if it's Danny Oak, if he comes in and finds a few $billion to throw at the team to fix things. I mean, granted, I think I wrote on Twitter the other day, I think he's probably picked up more knowledge in his 20 years of watching Arsenal than KSC has picked up in their almost 20 years of owning the team.
100%
like they just
true.
don't seem to get it. But that alone doesn't mean he's going to come in and be a great owner. If he were to come in and find really smart people and invest in the structure that is behind the team, I'd be feeling positive. But that's like one piece of the puzzle. There's so many things that have to come together. So at the end of the day, money is not enough. It will not, no matter how much the Cronkies can pull out of Walmart or their other franchises, like whatever they can dump into this team will not matter if they're making stupid decisions. Like you just can't give contracts to Willian and Cedric and all these. You can't do this stuff. It will catch you. It is not there's no get out of jail free if you're not willing to invest and invest smartly.
Well, speaking of Willian, because we have a lot of these questions in the back half of the episode that I'm sure we're going to get on the same thing. But speaking of Willian, did you have anything to say about this the West Brom game? Do you care to even talk about it? Or
I didn't watch much of that game, but I did get to see Willian's first goal live, so I feel like I was part of history. I honestly hope that's his last goal for Arsenal. I hope that's it. I hope we cut our losses and somebody was watching that game in MLS or China or wherever he might go, Brazil.
He'd be a great
just
MLS
somebody
fan.
was just like, oh, he's still got a little gas left in the tank. Maybe we can throw a few million at him and pry him away. Because if somebody is even thinking that, please take him.
So yeah, we won 3-1. It was actually a really boring game. Let's be honest. It wasn't. I didn't care that much about the game. But the thing that really annoyed me was just Williams scoring a goal like that now,
Yeah.
you know? And it's just like, I understand. And it just shows that he has talent. He has things that he could bring to the team. He just hasn't this year. That like is almost more frustrating than being absolutely trash. You know what I mean? I
I know
mean,
if he would have gone the whole rest of the year and not scored, I'd been like, yeah, he sucks.
and then the one thing I know we're in a very negative headspace right now, but
Hmm.
the one I do try and be positive sometimes and bring balance to the force and all that. I will say that like Pepe is improving, and I think that he's finally catching on. And he scored a goal, and it was his sixth goal this season in the Premier League, which 6 goals from a midfielder isn't a trash season. We've had midfielders
Yeah.
score far less, and I think as much of a journey as we've gone on with Pepe, I think he is turning right, and I think patience is a word, but I think I don't know. Like I was when I really sat down and thought about it, 6 goals with a couple games left, he could score a couple more. I mean, who knows? He might even break double digits. And coming from a midfielder, that's not a horrible return. So I thought that was a really a positive from the game. But other than that, West Brom is trash and isn't a good team. But it was also good to see Sam Allardyce be sad.
And Emil Smith Rowe finally scored a
Yeah,
Premier League goal as well. So, I mean, positives, but who gives a shit at this point? It's so frustrating to, I mean, there are some people saying like, hey, maybe things could fall in our direction and we move up the table and somehow Europa League falls to us because of the way other things play out. And just like, don't even fool yourself.
yeah.
It is not happening.
And if it does happen, it would paper over a lot of cracks that we need to actually to address. And I think that would be a
Right.
and then moving on from West Brom, we have Chelsea coming up this Wednesday, I believe. Wednesday.
Yeah, tomorrow afternoon, and I, I will probably turn it on, but this is not the game I was hoping it would be. I mean, it has very little consequence at this point for us.
I'm just hoping that they're just looking at the Champions League final and kind of forget about us.
Yeah,
I did not watch their game against City over the weekend, but like the games are coming thick and fast. But like I hate to say it because I love watching Arsenal, but like it's a game that doesn't really matter for us. Like we are now in this like dead rubber period where I don't want players that we're going to keep to get injured, and I want players that we're going to sell to look really good. It's basically where I'm at.
yeah. I'm ready. I'm ready for this. At this point, I'm ready for this team, this season to just be done because the only positive thing that can happen now is just letting let this season fall by the wayside and then get to work because it's all you can do now is try to pick up the scraps and try to put together a winning team, and that's all we've got left is the hope for the future. That's it.
I think that's like a soccer player or soccer supporters like mantra is next season will be better, right?
Yeah, we'll find a way to be competitive next year, and that's all I can think right now. It's really frustrating to be at that
Yeah.
point, but that's all we got.
It kind of sucks that this is like the dead rubber because I do think we have such a good run into the end of the season. This Chelsea game, like notwithstanding, but like we had 2 games against Newcastle and West Brom that were super winnable, and if I remember
Mm-hmm.
correctly, we have a bunch of other games coming up that are going to be, you know, we have Palace and Brighton to end the season. So if we were in such a better spot, like it could have been like those like last few games to push us over the edge. And
Yeah, I mean we're 6 points out of fifth place, but just to have so much work to do and have so many people fail in front of us,
yeah,
there's no way. I mean, it's just not happening.
yeah. I mean, as far as achievable goals, like my next goal is to definitely try and overtake Tottenham. That's like really where we need to be, right?
Mm-hmm. So they are 4 points ahead of us, and I don't know. I mean, it's possible. Weirder things have happened.
Yeah, I mean Tottenham is a dumpster fire right now, which is nice. It's
Sure.
it's nice to know that like this is a little bit of Schadenfreude, and I feel like as bad as the season is, we can enjoy a little bit of it. But at the beginning of the season, when they're in second place, and all the Tottenham fans are talking about this being the best season in the world for them, the best season in the world has ended in like their manager being fired and them only being 4 points ahead of us. So
Mm-hmm.
it's it's nice not to be alone in the shit dumpster.
Yes, misery loves company and all that. All right. Well, I think that's probably good for this first half. Let's take a break here and hit the really important questions right after this break. Welcome back from the break, and now our favorite part of the show where we answer all your questions that you've sent in to us. And the first one comes from Maxwell Boltinghouse, which is a fantastic name, by the way.
It's a great name.
Does Arteta's statements about management issues and the problems being behind the scene hold water? And if so, is that a solvable problem? Or is the solution to our issues a new coach?
Yeah, that was a strange interview, was it not? That was I'm assuming he's referring to that interview where Arteta was talking about there's issues that he can't talk about in public that are causing the poor record and things like that. I I think the quick answer is yes. I think there are a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we've talked about in the first part of this episode that are that are definitely issues. That I mean, we've been saying this for a couple episodes, if not a couple months, that the team's just not good enough on the field, and that isn't Arteta's problem. And to a certain extent, it's not the player's problem. If a player's not good enough to be playing at that level, it's not his fault that he's being shoved into that level to a certain extent. If that makes sense, I think there is definitely some systemic problems in the back. I think there's been some horrible decision making on who's doing what that is just not sustainable. But there does have to be some accountability to the coach. And I know that both you and I, Caleb, have been very strong Arteta supporters. But now this is where the rubber meets the road, that we do have to see some more positive momentum from Arteta going forward, in my mind. And it's not going to be this season, but I definitely do think next season, if we're still 11th place by Christmas and not going forward, not in any competitions, we need to start thinking about a different approach.
Yeah, I'm mostly in agreement there. I think I've not fully switched to like Arteta out or anything like that. I do believe he needs a little bit more time. He needs a normal season under his belt. I think it's very rough to consider these last two seasons anywhere near normal, and I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and let him have one more transfer window, one more an actual preseason, and at least a start to a season. I think it's kind of the rumor going around is that he's got at least the beginning of next season to see what he can do with whatever he gets. With a preseason, with some new players, perhaps, and then see how next season goes at the beginning. And if it's looking like it's going badly, they might have to call an end to this experiment. I think that's reasonable at this point. given all the time that he's had. And uh, I hate the idea of starting over again, but he can't have unlimited time to fix this. We don't have unlimited time. I mean, I think the sooner we can get back to the level that we need to be, the sooner we can get back to European football, the sooner we can right the ship, so to speak, the better. I don't think you can um, look at a Leeds type team and take the Premier League for granted. It's like the trajectory is clearly pushing us in the wrong direction. So things need to get fixed quickly. And I'm not convinced that Arteta is the guy yet. I mean, I think he is. I think he has the potential to be, but the the results have not met what I expected him to bring to this team yet. And it might be the players, but I got to look at that semifinal and think this is on the coach a bit, right? I mean, you can't look at a team and that literally just was not there. I mean, they just didn't show up. So that's got to be on the coach a little bit to not be able to get your team up for that sort of game, to not be able to get them fired up to get one goal. That's certainly on the coach. So I whatever is going on behind the scenes, whatever these extra things are, maybe it's who knows what it is. It doesn't matter really. A coach has to figure out how to overcome those things and motivate his players and get them on the same page and get the results.
Well, and that's the thing is like, again, like I'm definitely not an Arteta out, especially because I don't really see a ready-made replacement available right now.
Mm.
But I think when you look at a team like Villarreal, you can make the argument that like Arsenal can't compete in the champion or in the Premier League against some of these teams like City or Chelsea or even Man U, where they're spending this amount of money and the players are just not there. But when you're looking at a team sheet, I think player for player, at the very least, and maybe even an exaggeration, but Arsenal players stack up favorably against the Villarreal players, and that is not a player issue that we didn't get past the semifinal. If we were talking about the final losing to Man U, that would be a different story. But losing against Villarreal, it isn't a player issue. So then you have to kind of look at the manager and be like, maybe it is his fault for not getting the players up to speed. There's probably, I think there is a lot more going on in the back that we aren't seeing, but if we're not seeing it, we only can judge on what we know. And,
And I completely chalk up the way things played out to his lack of experience, because I think he was his biggest regret from that game was having Xhaka be unavailable, because he planned his entire game plan around Xhaka basically, or like things got flipped upside down as soon as Tierney had to come in. But I feel like a better coach, a more experienced coach, would have been able to handle that and find a way to get the results or get the players on the same page. It just looked like that one change completely threw the team off, and that's kind of unacceptable at this level. You have to be able to roll out multiple different formations, tactics, and have the team fall in line and do what needs to be done. And it seems like they've struggled with that. And we've seen Arteta roll out some different tactics over the last few weeks, and for some of them to great success. I think like moving Xhaka back into the Tierney position actually worked out pretty well. But we've seen the deficiencies of that as well, and he hasn't been able to correct for those. And some of that is the players that he has available, and some of that is just bad tactics and bad ideas and bad timing. I think there's a lot to be said for just putting players in positions where they're most likely to succeed and not trying to overthink things. And he's still got a lot to learn. I mean, we're seeing him develop as a coach in real time, and it's a struggle. It's not going to be easy for anybody, and he has not had any lower level experience to fall back on. He has assistant coaching experience. He's not had to have all this pressure on him. Um, it's just there's a lot of things that only happen with experience and time, and we're not in a position where we can wait that out. And so at the end of the day, we might just have to wash our hands of this and say it was too soon. It was too much of a risk. It was not the right timing for bringing in Arteta. But I understand why you would take the risk. I mean, given the um, potential high ceiling that he does have, why not? But you're having to deal with the growing pains as well.
Yeah.
So I think we have to be okay with the idea that this experiment might not work.
Yeah, and I think I have always been a very pro Arteta, and I was very much a pro hire of him, and I'm definitely hitting the end of my rope with him, like not in a bad way necessarily, but just that maybe my opinion was wrong on that he was going to work out. And you just kind of have to look at Chelsea and the difference after Chelsea fired Lampard and got Tuchel in, and the extreme change that happened. And Lampard is a very similar coach to Arteta in a lot of ways, where he didn't have a ton of experience, but he was a club legend. There's a lot of hyping him up, and there's a lot of feelings around him, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
But then you bring in an extremely experienced coach, and you can see the difference. That coach, I think they've allowed 4 goals in 10 Premier League games since he's taken over, got him to the Champions League final. There's a lot to be said. And, this Arteta experiment definitely has to start producing some real results that aren't a FA Cup win very, very soon.
Right. You can't just win against West Brom. Like you have to win the big games as well. Anything else you want to say about Arteta?
No, I was going to move on to Zachary Hall's question, if that sounds good.
Yeah.
Zachary Hall, and we kind of touched on this in our Timbit, which is how many millions need to be wisely spent this summer to transform Arsenal into a competitive squad in the Premier League?
The word coming out this week is that this team is ready to do a fire sale. I mean, it seems like there is a handful of players that will be retained, that will be built around. You've got your Saka, Emile Smith Rowe. We've got Balogun coming in, Saliba, Tierney. Pepe will likely be around because I doubt they're going to be able to get rid of him at a decent price. Not that they want to. I mean, you got to keep some pieces in place to build around, and it seems like anybody else, Aubameyang will probably stay as well. I don't think they're going to be able to offload him, and I don't think he wants to go anywhere necessarily. But all that said, I think anybody else is available at the right price, and a lot of it now, I think, without European football next year, is going to be down to who we can move on. And at that point, I really feel like you might be able to get one good player, for the price that we're going to get, for the amounts that we're going to get back from a lot of these deadwood players. It's not like we have a bunch of hot stars that we're trying to get rid of. It's going to be, piecemeal, sort of putting together a few million here, a few million there. And I think it's going to be a tough rebuild unless there's some additional money injected into the team. But I think I've said this many times in the past, and I hope that now without uh, European football in the picture, that they will really go young and try to develop young players that they can sell on and just I think that is the way back. I think that is the way forward, and that's developing good players, bringing in a group of young players that can develop chemistry together, bringing in guys from the academy, um, and just really using that exuberance of youth that we have seen from Saka and Emil Smith Rowe and such, just the guys that have no fear, and building a team around that fearlessness and that energy, and trying to bring in guys that are will buy into what Arteta's trying to do, and kind of getting rid of this mentality that we need to have a bunch of aging stars to anchor the team, because I think that has actually let us down.
It's weighed down our team more than it's anchored, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's um, based on the contracts and all that. It's just it has not worked out to the benefit of Arsenal to go that route. And I understand like you need a good mix of experience and youth, but we need to spend smarter. If you're going to go get that experience, you got to do it better than how we've done it. Like, and this, you can't just be about locker room presence. You have to bring in guys that can still contribute in a meaningful way. So there's, I, I am not convinced about Edu. I am not convinced about um, this scouting network that we still need to put together. There's a lot left to be desired as far as how we're going about rebuilding already. And I have some concerns that things are going to come together in a perfect way to put it to a really good competitive team together for next season. But I could be wrong. I'd love to be wrong.
I would love to be wrong too. I think one of the bigger issues now that we are landing in this reality of, not being in Europe is that it's going to be harder to convince players to come here. If we're not in Champions League, like, I don't think there's a price we can pay to get Holland here.
Mm-hmm.
I literally just don't think there's a price. Like, you could offer him the world and he may not come here. And that was the big issue I remember when Man City was first starting off and trying, like, they literally had all the money in the world. And to get their project going, it was buying players that finally got them to the point where they were qualifying for Champions League. And, they got Kaká, I remember, and they paid well over, probably double what a normal price would be for him in wages. And he was a free transfer, I believe, if I remember correctly, and then just like paid him like absurd wages to get him to come. And he wasn't even his best at that point. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where Arsenal is, because the best players in the world want to play in the best competitions in the world. And that's my fear right now, is you're kind of in this kind of shit spiral right now where you're not making Europe, so you're not making the money, and then you're not being able to attract the best talent, so that means you're not being able to go up to Europe. And that's where what you're saying of trying to invest in youth and really doing that is the best idea. But even that's hard,
That takes years.
yeah,
It takes years to develop that pipeline and to actually have those things pay off for you. I mean, the goal would be to start with a youth core that you can build around and is actually has some talent, which we have a few good players in that category. I mean, we've got Saliba, Mavropanos, like there's other players that have potential to be really good that are in that 23 to 25 range, like pretty young and still with a lot of potential. And you want those, you're hoping to develop those players and either selling them on or developing a team that you can afford to keep them around for longer. Like you want to hopefully have this come to fruition in the next 3 years. It's a short term solution until you can get to that next level. But yeah, I think in addition to that, you have to have a project that people are willing to buy into. I think, amazingly enough, Arteta has convinced some players that they should be part of his project, and I think that whatever he's saying behind the scenes is positive and convincing people that they should be part of what he's doing. I, and all the talk leading up to this season, I think there was an idea that this was a three-year plus project, and that getting to Champions League through Europa League would have been an accelerant, but really not the um, goal that they had in mind necessarily. It was kind of like a fluke that they lucked into the FA Cup win, and then it was going to be a tough road through Europa League, and so things had to fall into place. But I think there is an idea that there was a longer term plan in Arteta's mind to get us back to the Champions League level, and I think in the way that he talks, this team is miles away from where he wants to be. But I think he has an idea of what he wants to do. He has an idea of the players that he wants to get and the things that he needs, and now it's just a matter of making that happen. I don't know that not making Champions League this year really throws that off that much. I think he kind of was thinking that would have been a nice thing, but not necessarily the thing that made his plan work. So I still think that there's hope that he can still recruit pretty well. And I think if you're looking for a different tier of player, that doesn't necessarily break that plan. It just means that um, you're hoping to have some recruitment that explodes for you. Like you can't have a bunch of guys come in that fail. Like you can't have a Willian come in and just completely fail you for the season. You have to really hit some of these out of the park, and I they just have to be smarter. That's what it comes down to. It's just like I just see some really dumb decisions continually come back to bite us, and it's frustrating because you know that those millions of dollars are setting us back, and that's not something we can afford right now. So I like the things that Arteta says, and it sounds like he's got the plan to take things forward, but you actually have to have some results to help convince some people. And I don't know how many people they're going to be able to recruit just with a plan. You've got to have something to show for it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, throwing a bunch of money at it is not going to be 100% the solution, because I don't think there's enough money in the world to really fix the problem without actual smarts.
Yeah, I hope that I hope that they're a little bit better in their recruitment. I hope that if they do splash the cash, that they, if the Cronkies do come in and decide that they need to fix things with a signing of a couple new players, I hope that they are smart with that money. I mean, I don't want to see them do a Pepe and dump $70,000 or $70 million into a player when they could go buy 2 or 3 players for that cost. I think it's better to have three $20 million players that have a lot of potential than one $70 million player, because you cannot load all your eggs in one basket that way, right? With the way things are right now.
Totally.
All right. Peter Sleep has a little bit of a question/comment here. He said, I hated getting knocked out of Europa, but I think losing to Man U in the final would have been worse.
We did kind of bring this up when we were talking about it a little bit, but yeah, I kind of agree with him that like it hurt getting knocked out of Europe. I don't think we win that game against Man U. I mean, it's a one-off. weird things happen. We won the FA Cup against playing against City and Liverpool in that run. Uh, but yeah, I would, and I was getting a little bit of shades of a couple years back when we were in the final against Chelsea. That was running through my mind, and like I know that's a game that runs with both through both of our heart because we were watching that game in Seattle. And what bar was that? That was
Was that at Fado?
yeah, it was at Fado,
Mm,
and I took extra
rest in
time. Yeah.
peace.
Oh, is it gone now?
Yeah,
Oh
Fado's
god.
gone.
Anyways, that sucks. But like I just had memories of that Chelsea game, which was just we weren't competitive that entire game against Chelsea, and I felt like that was going to be the final against Man U, and so I there is a certain part of me that like yeah, we got out of Europe, we probably weren't going to win. Probably weren't going to go to the Champions League anyways, and as I said before, if we were in the Champions League, I feel like we would have been out of depth anyways. So yeah, maybe there's a silver lining to the loss.
Yeah, maybe we've averted some additional heartbreak here this season. Maybe much worse heartbreak because we would have had some hope.
Yeah,
Getting to the final, we would have been, yeah, way too hopeful, I'm sure.
yeah. It's the last thing that came out of Pandora's box was hope. The last monster was hope, and I totally buy that because my worst feeling as an Arsenal fan, not to go down this road, was the Champions League final. Not because it was a great experience and everything going to the final, but I remember going to the Georgian Dragon, being so excited, took a day off work for it, and when we went 1-0 ahead in that game, I was so excited, and that was the first time I actually hoped that we were going to beat Barcelona. I actually had hope because the entire time coming in, I was like, just happy to be here. We're playing Barcelona and like the Pep Guardiola, that Barcelona, and then to go a goal up, I was like, oh, we're going to win this. And I had that hope. And just to have that just like destroyed was just, I'm sure most of the people listening to this understand that feeling of having the hope snatched away. So maybe
It's kind of par for the Arsenal course now. Like that, like you said, I think you said that it was just like that was a starting point to successive failures.
yeah. But anyway, so yeah, maybe we can be happy that we didn't get our hopes dashed later, but I don't know if that's how you're supposed to follow soccer, but
I don't think so. I think that's probably not it.
it might be an Arsenal way to follow soccer, but it's probably not the correct way to follow soccer.
Right.
So there's one more question, and it is from good friend of the pod, Charles Allison. Given where we are right now, what counts as successful? What counts as a successful season next year? I feel like standards are being dragged through the mud, but how low are they? Is top 7 going to be a success this next year?
They, I think every year to think of anything less than making European soccer as a success would be doing ourselves a disservice. I think like you always have to have high expectations, and if you start saying, "Oh well, we just need to make top 10," like what good does top 10 get you? What is it? That means nothing. Um, I think at the minimum we need to expect to get back into Europe somehow. I don't care if it's Europa League. I think if you drop out of European competition, getting back into it is a success. Whether that's Champions League or Europa League, it doesn't matter to me. I think that you have to work your way back up, and um, I don't see next season necessarily being an overnight success. I think a rebuild is in order, and probably, like I said, should have happened this year, but instead we pushed it off another year. So now we have to deal with the hard truth that is we're not at that level right now. But given the right moves in this offseason, given a good run of form, given some good coaching, I see the potential to get back there next year. Like, I don't think we need to be out of Europe for very long. And I think even Arteta mentioned that, like, there was times when, like, in recent memory, like Chelsea fell out of favor, or fell out of that top tier a little bit, and had a season out of that, and that launched them back into success. And you kind of need that sometimes to get things fixed and get back on the right course. So um, I don't think you can lower your expectations. I think the expectation should be that this was a blip, that this was a tough year, a run of a couple tough years, and you got to put that behind you and find a way to get back to where you should be. And I think that there's a lot of people that say, oh, maybe we have too high of expectations, maybe we have this entitlement that we should be a top tier team, that we aren't, but we aren't. But I think the second you start believing that you are less than that, then you certainly are. I mean, like, you can't stop believing that you could be a better team, or else you never will be. So I think it starts with the fans and the belief, and it goes from there. Because when the fans believe, when the team believes, when the coaches believe, you can make things happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think the simple question is Europe or it's not a successful season. Like, I think this year we can all agree has been not a successful season.
Mm-hmm.
And it is interesting from a long term, as someone who watched Arsenal when we were title contenders all the time, and that, like, watching from when we were winning titles to now watching where we're, it's been a minute since we've been in the title conversation. It's been a few years, and seeing that slip away from us, and now we're moving to and then it was, being in Europe every year, being in Champions League every year. That was a conversation we had, and now that's kind of slipped away. And now the conversation is just being in Europe. Like, you are seeing a trajectory here, and it's a worry
Mm-hmm.
for me. It's a very worrying trajectory. It's not ideal, but I think you have to look at it in a way of, like, I always call it achievable goals. This is something I do in my life. It's what I do in my world. It's what I have for expectations for the Sounders, or Arsenal. And so, what is the achievable goal for Arsenal? We're not going to be in the title conversation next year. I just, if we do, it's a miracle, and, like, something went wrong in the world. Like, or went extremely right, I should say, but something went wrong for everybody else. But I think the achievable goal, and the thing that we should be aiming for next year, is definitely Europe. And I don't think it's out of the realms to say that we should be shooting for top 4. In a ideal world, that's where we were going. And I think that's where I'm going to level my level of satisfactory versus a good goal. Satisfactory is we make Europe again. That's satisfactory. And then, like, a positive year is that we go into Champions League again. Those are my two kind of, what is the level of success. And if we don't make it in Europe again, then we're going to have to reassess who we are as a team. As you said, like, it is what it is. And if, we're not a team that can't make Europe, we're going to have to reassess who we are as a team and what we're trying to do. And, you brought up the Chelsea thing, but the thing about Chelsea is there was only 1 year that they didn't make Europe, and then they went right back into it. A better comparison is Liverpool, in which they definitely did have a couple foul years. I think it was like 2 or 3 years where they're in their Europa League, and I think they did miss 1 year of European football altogether. It's just going to be more a question of if Arteta is like Klopp, and if we have a player like Salah, who no one thought was important and is suddenly like an amazing player. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, I think Europe is a minimum. It's not even a goal. It's just a minimum for me to make Europa League next year.
Yeah, I think that's the only level of success that we can call a success. I mean, that's anything short of that is mediocrity. I mean, nothing else counts. Yeah. Unless you're getting relegated.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not even part of the conversation in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, if we're continuing down this trajectory, then we have to, like, I say I try and keep it rational. It's just like we have to reassess who we are as a team and what our goals are. And I don't think it's necessarily wrong to talk about that, because it just depends on what the investment is, what is going on with the team, how you, because you it's going to take a shit ton of money to really get back into be with the big boys again, to be in the into the title winning. And is that something we want to do? And we talked about that last episode quite a bit. And I think that's, kind of a soul searching thing we're going to have to do as we go forward.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think that's a good place to end things, although we do have a bit of fantasy talk here. And I see an interesting note. So tell me what's up with fantasy this week.
All right. So fantasy, I got 49, you got 41. We've been the league has basically stayed pretty stable.
Mm-hmm.
But my confession I have to make, and I actually feel really bad about it, which is since Tierney has been injured and not playing, I have not been playing a single Arsenal player on my fantasy team. And I feel like I feel bad about it, but I don't. And maybe could be to the listener. Which Arsenal player should I be playing on my fantasy team? Because I can't justify anybody right now.
Yeah, that's tough. Saka, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. Oh.
But even he doesn't score that much.
Yeah.
I mean, he does intangibles which don't show up on the fantasy.
Well, but maybe I bet you I could afford Saka.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll put him on the team. How about you? Who are you running from Arsenal on your fantasy team?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head because I'm a bad coach. A bad owner.
Well, I was impressed that you went from 41, because the last couple of weeks we haven't talked about it, because I think we both have been hitting 20s in our points.
Yeah, I still have Aubameyang and I still have Leno.
Yeah, I can buy Leno. Aubameyang, I just don't think I can really justify. He's not putting up.
He's really the only person that scores on Arsenal, even though 3 people that were not named Aubameyang scored in this last game. Yeah. But it would either be him or Pepe, honestly.
Yeah, Pepe.
Lacazette's not playing enough, but
yeah. So in the comments below or in emails or Facebooks, please tell me which Arsenal player I should start. And I think Wednesday's going to be too late, but by the Crystal Palace game, I will start whoever people tell me to start. Unless you're trying to sabotage me, and then.
All right. Well, with that, we should wrap things up for this week. Thank you all for joining us and sticking with us through the full episode. If you've made it this long, if you have not subscribed, go ahead and do that wherever you pick up your podcasts. And if you have subscribed, give us a review and let us know how we're doing. Let other people know how we're doing so that we can get the word out that way. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at W of N London, and do go there and follow us, because I feel like I write some really good tweets, but I feel like it's a tree falling in a forest. If there's nobody there to read my tweets, are they actually happening?
I mean,
only you can tell us.
Your Twitter game is on fire, so yeah, definitely follow these tweets.
Really, I am much more concise, and I'm a much better writer than I am a talker sometimes. So some of my thoughts come out better on Twitter than they do in this podcast. YouTube is where we have video versions of our podcast. Occasionally you'll see our faces, and well, pretty much every week we have the audio version available as well. So you can join us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the like button, and leave us some comments there. And if you'd like to send in your questions, comments a different way, westofnorthlondon@gmail.com is one way you can do that. And another way is by leaving us a voicemail, and we'll put you on the next episode and you can hear yourself. And we would love to hear from you as well. That would be by going to anchor.fm/West of North London. And there's a button there where you can leave us a message. And we would love to hear your voice and get your thoughts for our next episode. If you like our theme song, go check out Bobcat. They are BOBC. They're at bobc.at. That's their website. It's a .at, so don't try to go to bobcat.com unless you need some heavy equipment. If you want some music, bobc.at is where to go. And I think that is all from us for this week. So as always,
See you at the next gun show.